We podcast?
We're podcasting.
Okay. We podcasting?
All right. Welcome to the Buff Show. We are covering backup contracts today.
Backup offers.
Backup offers.
Good, bad, indifferent.
Yep. For buyer and seller. So there is an addendum for this, just to pretend like you're doing something.
So I can have a piece of paper.
So there's a secondary backup contract. So basically a backup offer is if there is a property that has a primary offer has gone under contract, there is a way that buyers and sellers can do a backup contract, which means if that first offer falls through, it automatically reverts to the secondary backup contract, and you have in there set terms, right? And then
it's essentially a rep C, and then the dates get skewed.
Yeah. So let's talk about the pros and cons for that, and who should we start first,
well,
buyers
or
sellers?
The sellers, because exactly like you said, if the original contract, your first position contract, let's say, falls out, you as a seller don't have a choice anymore. Once you accept that backup, it goes into position the second your buyers drop out.
Okay.
So you lose a little bit of that negotiating leverage, or say your house got really hot and you had 5 other people come and, hey, let me know, or, people started throwing offers at you. If you accept one, they're next in position automatically.
So the pros for a seller is if their first offer falls through, they already have another one lined up.
I would say that's a con in my book.
Okay.
Because at that point, if there's someone really on the backside waiting, because that buyer can still drop out and they still have all their contingency dates in place. So I'd say that's a con, because now if other offers come to the table while you're in your escrow, you can't entertain or leverage against these other offers.
So let's give like a hypothetical one. Let's say you have a house for $700,000. You have 2 buyers. You go under contract with one buyer at $700,000, and another buyer's like, "Hey, we really like it. We want to put in a backup contract." You're definitely not going to accept a backup contract that'd be less than $700.
Correct.
It'd be $700 or above. I have seen cases where like the backup offer is like $705 or $710, a little bit above. So the pros for a seller that I can see is let's say you did get a backup offer for $700,000 or above. The pros are you can leverage that against your primary people to be like, if they come at you for due diligence issues, you can be like, "Hey, we have a backup offer. They're ready to go. Like, quit throwing stinks over little stuff." Or even with the appraisal, like it'd be hard for an appraiser to be like, "Hey, this
doesn't appraise for this value." When
you're like,
we have offers.
Yeah, we have 2 buyers, but you don't need a backup offer for that. You could just show them two
offers.
Yeah,
offers that you haven't accepted.
Yeah. So the cons for a seller is that once they accept this legitimate backup addendum, is what you're saying is the sellers are then bound. Like they're bound by 2 parties. The initial party.
Yep.
If that initial party backs out, then it automatically goes into this second party.
Yep.
And what you're saying is the buyers can cancel this at any time.
Yeah, the buyers still have their due diligence period, their financing and appraisal deadlines. I mean, you can negotiate that stuff out, but not technically. People aren't going to, be reckless in that sense. But
for a backup offer,
exactly.
Yeah.
But say a third and a fourth come into the woodwork. That obviously, if you have 2 offers, the house was fairly popular.
For say 720 or 750.
Someone comes in and gets aggressive and says, "I got a 720, but they were a day late," and you've already accepted a backup offer.
Yeah,
you can't leverage that anymore.
Right. So. Yeah. I'm with you. I don't love backup offers even with sellers. Like I would just rather say, "Hey, verbally, we'll let you know if anything falls through," and I can still use that as leverage against the other party and be like, "Hey, we have
someone ready to go and willing."
Yeah. I would say the way a backup offer could be good is if let's say this house, we really think it's only worth $650, but we have it under contract at $700, and we have another buyer that's willing to do $700. In that scenario, it could make sense to where
because what's the definition of value?
Yeah,
right.
What Yeah.
What a reasonable seller will sell to a reasonable buyer, and a reasonable buyer will buy from a reasonable seller.
Right.
So now we have two reasonable buyers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've just made the value.
Yeah. One other thing I'll throw in there is if you're a seller, you have set dates on your first offer on like when settlement would be and all that. The backup offer will show up like settlement to be X amount of days after buyer's receipt of seller's notice. So like you could have the settlement deadline 45 days after the primary offers cancels, and then that goes into play. So like it kind of puts you at this like, well, I don't know even where all this would fall.
That limbo risk.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then your hands are tied if the primary offer does cancel, then those dates are automatically set into place. You're bound by them.
So pros are you could use it as a little bit of leverage and justify an appraisal.
Yeah. But you can do that if you just verbally say, hey, we have another offer that we could go with.
Yep.
So
cons, you get locked into it. You don't have as much freedom if you have other multiple offers coming through, and you're locked in as a seller. You don't have the outs the buyer does.
Yeah.
So,
and buyers have all the outs.
All the outs. Yep.
So, okay, let's talk for buyers now. You're a buyer, found a house you love, but there's already a primary contract. Should you do a backup offer?
See, and I only like a backup offer with a buyer and it's very situational, right? If my buyer wants this house, it's a family heirloom, or it's exactly what they've been looking for. They have time, they have resources, and they just want to make sure they're not going to miss out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then let's if you meet all these parameters and this is like a do or die for you, let's try to get you in that position, because then you are automatically next.
Yeah.
And we're not going to get beat out or get into a bidding war with two or three other offers. But like I said, that's a very small window where I'd ever really recommend to a buyer putting in a backup.
So it'd be like I always ask buyers, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like this house? And if they're like a 9 or a 10, this is the house of our dreams, then it probably makes sense to do a backup offer, because chances of you finding that again are slim.
Exactly.
But so the pros is if that initial offer falls through, it automatically reverts to you. You're put into place and you're locked and loaded, ready to go. Mm-hmm. The cons are if you're a buyer and you're trying to negotiate a deal that's already under contract, sellers are not going to budge.
Ain't got no legs.
Yeah. Yep. So let's go back to the house at 700. They're not going to take an offer for 690 or 680
and have seller paids and all the stuff that you can negotiate
But if, let's say, you're just like, okay, we'll just keep an eye on it. Let's say the deal falls through because of due diligence or something happens. Yep. All of a sudden, those sellers are a little bit beat up.
Gun shy.
Yeah. Yep. And they're like, man, these buyers didn't want our house at 700. And maybe there's new findings. Maybe there's radon, meth, mold, needs a new roof. If you're a buyer locked in the backup offer, you have due diligence, but you're locked in at a new price that might be harder to pull the sellers down from.
You as a buyer, and you can relate on the buyer side to a lot of other commercial type sales. For example, I was buying a Ranger once. We ordered it, and it finally came in, and I went to go in to haggle. We went right to a dealership. We went to a dealership after we ordered a Ranger, and I went in there and was going to wheel and deal with this guy. He's actually a family friend, and I walked in all big chested and I said, hey, what can you do for me on this? And he said, I can give it to you for this price, or I can sell it to the 10 people that are already behind you.
You're right.
So he cut my legs out, right? I was the buyer at that point. And then at the same time, I told him, hey, my next Ranger, like another 8 years down the road, we decided to get a new Ranger again. And I went in there and I was a lot less in a hurry and knew exactly what I wanted, and told him, hey, I'll wait. He goes, we have this one on the floor, and then it didn't sell. The people couldn't get financed, for whatever reason. And he ended up calling me back. Hey, I can work a deal with you. Let's get you in here, and gave me that leverage back because he didn't have people stacked up.
Yeah.
And I wasn't already telling him I want this thing. I'm going to buy it. So
that's a good example.
You can really see it. It's basic salesman technique, right? Everybody wants to get the car salesman, and same kind of idea when you're buying a house. Buyer holds all the cards if they have time and patience.
Yeah. So, and then you just have to keep in mind, if you're a buyer and you do execute a backup offer on a house, sellers are going to use that as leverage with the original buyers. And then those buyers on that house are going to be like, somebody else wants this house too.
Exactly.
Like, and then they're going to feel like, oh, I got to buy this now.
You're almost lessening your odds of getting the house in a sense by putting in a backup offer. Because exactly human nature, like now there's competition, stuff gets overlooked.
Oh, for sure.
Not necessarily greed, but the drive to get the prize gets bigger. So
it happens to me probably monthly on KSL and Facebook Marketplace.
Yep.
I'll be like, hey, that dirt bike looks like a really good deal. Like, say it's $7,000. And I'll be like him-hawing about it. And then the guy's like, look, if you want it, come get it. If not, like, I'll find somebody else. I'm like, yeah, would you really?
Will you, though?
And then next thing I know,
it's gone.
And I tell Carl, I'm like, dang it, that was a good deal.
Yep. Yeah. It's always a way better deal after it's gone.
Yeah. And then I'm like kicking myself and I'm like, no, that really like what was I looking at? Yeah.
And I see, a lot of agents, and it's a good way to work it. If you have multiple people interested, you as a listing agent, if you're calling to these other clients, people will solicit, hey, do you want to go in backup position?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's smart for them because they're strengthening and they're locking in that first buyer, right? They're creating that dynamic.
Yeah.
So it's a strategy for an agent as well. So keep that in mind.
Right.
Especially like, oh, you guys should really put something in.
Yeah.
They're just trying to strengthen and lock in their first buyer.
Yeah, for a seller, it can definitely help.
Especially if they're feeling rickety
mm-hmm.
and they just want to get the deal done.
Yeah.
Obviously on the ones where you've just got that perfect location, perfect house, perfect price.
Yeah.
You'll know when you're trying to fish for seconds and backups,
mm-hmm.
or if you're just got all the offers coming no matter what. So
yeah. I mean, if it's a house you've been eyeballing for years, you're like, this is the one, we got to have it. It's already under contract. At that point, put in the backup. Like you might be strengthening the other offer, but if it opens back up, like you could be pinned up against other offers and other agents and other buyers. That is one other con I would say for a seller, is if you take up a backup offer, you lose like going back to market and being able to get multiple offers.
And I think that's also one of those scenario type things.
Yeah.
Going back to market is sometimes the best thing for a house.
Right. Yeah.
It was dead. We took the first offer that came because we've been
mm-hmm.
sitting on the market. But for some reason, the floodgates opened. And now we're getting all these other offers. So we're going, shit.
Yeah. It could have been like you went under contract in February.
Yep.
In the dead of snow and winter. And then the buyers back out and you're into March or April. And then it's like it's a whole new market when you go back as a new listing at that point. So there's a lot here. I mean, it really is very situational, but I would say in most cases for buyers and sellers, it's just better to just wait.
Backup offers in my mind are dirty.
Yeah.
Are usually dirty.
It's a point of leverage for either side. I've never had one go through. I've written them. I've had them in place. There was one that I remember, like probably within the past 6 months, that the agent was like, do you want to do a backup offer? And I was like, I don't. My clients liked the house. They didn't love it. And we had the same conversation. And we didn't do a backup offer. It fell through. And then they opened it up again. And it went into multiple offers again. But we didn't even throw our hats into the ring. My clients didn't want it that bad enough.
At the price point, it was
at the
worth
price.
it. Yeah.
So in that situation, it could have made sense. But yeah, rarely do I see it where it's like, yeah, let's throw in the backup offer. It's just better to keep a close eye on it. And
I've only written one.
Yeah.
And by the time it come to it was like a 4-month escrow. They were trying to grind the first offer through.
Yeah.
And we ended up just writing a whole new offer to clean everything up, canceling out of the backup and writing a whole fresh Rep C.
Yeah.
So I've never been it to where it was actually needed.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't see them a whole lot. One other thing I'll mention is like once a deal goes under contract, a listing, it's either going to show up on the MLS as pending or under contract or backup.
Yeah.
Like pending and under contract just means that like they're not really seeking out backup offers. But if you see backup, that means they're like, yeah, we'd take a backup offer. We'd still show it,
Right. And also there's one more in there, the time clause. You'll see that
the time
as well,
clause, yeah.
Which is essentially the same thing as we've got contingencies on our first offer, so we're taking backups.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Yeah. Or we're kind of like backups.
Yeah.
Another
podcast
yeah,
on
the
that
time
one,
clause is another podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, so hopefully that gives you some food for thought as far as when it comes to backup offers. Should you write one? Should you not? Again, talk with your agent. It's case by case.
The best thing to do with a backup offer,
yeah,
is to be ready enough that you're the first one in, so you're not the backup.
That's true.
So, talk to your agent and be ready. That's key.
That is key, and people often overlook that. Like most buyers are him-hawing around like, what price should we offer? Like, if you can just get something in, let's say you look at it on a Friday or Thursday, get one in that night. Quit thinking about it. And give them, because there's a time from when the offer's submitted to when the sellers respond, and it's typically 24 hours. But if you drag that out, like you're just opening up the opportunity for more competition.
Yep.
So be quick. That's a really good point. Have your ducks in a row. Be ready with lender, everything like that, and you'll be set. So. Anything else you want to throw in there?
That was kind of an easy one. We basically were like, we hate backup offers. Don't ask us.
Yeah.
No.
But we'll do them if you want.
But we'll do them, I get.
Yeah.
So.
But amen.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. Till next time.
I love you.